just as Nigeria is staggering to get itself out of recession, after more than 10 months, South Africa on its part slipped into that recession, first time in 8 years. South Africa slipped into recession after its GDP declined by 0.7% during the first quarter of 2017, after contracting by 0.3% in Q4 of 2016. The two countries, generally regarded as the topmost economies in the continent, are not alone, as they're only joining a growing list of countries which have slipped into recession. Let's talk more about this, and joining me to do that from South Africa is Petri Redelinghuys, an investment trader and economist who joins me via Skype. Many thanks for your time, Petri.
Thank you for having me, and apologies for being so terribly casual today.
That's okay, Petri. Yes, a lot of memes. Let's start on a lighter note. A lot of memes have come out since it tumbled into that recession. And let me just say one of it. Let's quote, "Our country is suffering from gobsession." End of quote. Gobsession. That sounds more political. It seems South Africa actually went into that recession basically because the country is in political turmoil. What's your take?
Well, right. So, I mean, let's look at what the definition of a technical recession is first. That definition states that if you have economic contraction or GDP contraction for 2 consecutive quarters, the economy is in recession. So that is the situation that South Africa is in at the moment. Is it self-inflicted? Otherwise, is it a result of the political uncertainty and political shambles? Well, shambles is maybe the wrong word, but the political ongoings within South Africa. I would say most likely yes. We have some unfavorable policies toward employers. We also have a lot of uncertainty around. I mean, if you look at what happened to the mining charter last week, the resulting reaction from the shares within the mining sort of sector, one could say that yes, the lack of economic growth could probably be laying at the feet of the government. So, in other words, saying that it is this political environment that's perhaps not conducive to economic growth, and that could be one of the reasons why we are in a technical recession. However, trying to pin the blame isn't going to solve the problem. What we need to do is we need to, contain inflation, and we need to spur economic growth. So, I think focusing on the solution is probably better.
Yes, some analysts actually say that South Africa had entered that recession as far back as September 2016, especially when we're seeing that downgrade in its ratings. Are you of that opinion? And they say that it's probably getting out of that recession already.
Well, yeah, so the nature of the data that they use, or the information that they use to calculate these things is, of course, backward looking. So the data that they've used, looks back over the last 3 months and says, well, those 3 months were bad, and the 3 months before those were bad, and therefore we are technically in recession. However, current data and expected data is better. So people are speculating that perhaps we are already out of the recession, as we sit now. However, I don't know. I'd say the proof is in the pudding. I do think that we have a number of concerns, over-indebted consumers, a lack of expendable, disposable income. So I think that if we see an interest rate cut, perhaps, or continued interest rate easing from the South African Reserve Bank, I think that we stand a chance of getting out of the recession. I don't want to sit on the fence now and say, well, yes, we're in. No, we're not at this point, because to tell you the truth, I don't know quite enough about, I don't have enough information to be able to make that call. What I know at this point is that from a textbook perspective, our economy is currently in recession, and until proven otherwise, that is going to be sort of my approach to how I do things in the market.
Yes, of course, the negative impacts of the downgrades had begun to show in South Africa, and of course, leading to that recession, if we would say that. How can South Africa get back to investment grade?
Oh, well, okay. So I think that question is a bit loaded, because you have to look at the reasons why we are sub-investment grade. Yes, there are a lot of problems in terms of the performance of the state-owned enterprises, and they're obviously the ones that are really the ones out in the bond market raising capital for the country, or raising capital to run their operations, and thus keeping the country going. And ultimately, they are the ones that are going to suffer from the downgrade, right? So in order to fix that problem, one needs to fix those entities. In order to do that, I think you're probably going to get, or probably going to need some sort of clarity and a feeling of safety coming from a political standpoint. So we have a situation where nobody really trusts the government within South Africa. And I don't think any of the international investors look at our government and trust it either. So, and if you look at a couple of things, for example, today the rand is absolutely on the slippy slide because our one of our ministers came out and said that we might have to look at changing the constitution in order to change the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank so that they can foster more inclusive economic growth, which inclusive economic growth is fantastic, but to change the constitution, saying those types of things scares people. And obviously the rand goes from 12 rand 84 to 13 rand 05 within a couple of minutes. And this is actually happening right now as we speak. So until that type of risk is removed from the market, and the only way to do that, I'm afraid, is going to be a big political change. Until we see that, I don't think this risk from the market or this risk premium that South African assets trade at is going to be removed. And I think until then, we're on downgrade watch.
All right.
I think that's the reason.
All right, investment trader and economist Petri, thank you so much for your time on Business Nigeria.